Member of the full committee, gentleman from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Spaulding, how would a constitutional amendment requiring a balanced budget undermine Social Security spending, military retirement benefits, and other important public service programs?
Thank you, Mr. Nadler. There have been a variety of balanced budget amendments that have been considered by Congress, but among the many troubling results would be that it would essentially render it unconstitutional to spend reserves and spend reserves on Social Security benefits, on military benefits, because the proposals that have been before this Congress have limited expenditures to revenues brought in the same year. And that would require significant and severe changes to Social Security and a whole host of other programs that ensure security. And it's a bad idea.
Isn't Social Security premised on the idea of prepaying?
Precisely. So when you are going to limit expenditures only to revenues that have come in that year, the way Social Security is set up, it would require cuts to Social Security. But that's not the only challenge with a balanced budget amendment. What it's doing is putting fiscal policy into the Constitution. It would put Congress in a straitjacket. It would make it exceedingly difficult to respond to economic crises, to recessions, to armed conflict, to a pandemic, as I mentioned earlier. And that is not the way our Constitution is designed. It would also put judges and jurists and attorneys in a strange position where they would be refereeing debates that should be happening here in the Article I branch of government and not over in Article III, and having jurists kind of weigh fiscal policy. So for a whole host of reasons, the Constitution is not the appropriate place to be debating fiscal policy.
Thank you. Mr. Spaulding, do the states or the Congress have the authority to mandate limits on the scope of an Article V convention, such as limiting discussion to a single subject or amendment?
No, and that is one of the concerns, if not the top concern. There are no rules. The language in Article V about convening a constitutional convention is incredibly spare. It just says Congress convenes a convention. And there's a whole host of questions that I included in my written testimony that I touched on at the oral portion of the testimony, but there are no rules, there are no answers. That's why jurists from across the ideological spectrum have expressed serious concern about how a convention would work. But to answer your question, ultimately, there is no enforceable way to ensure that the convention only considers a single subject.
Thank you, Mr. Spaulding. Last month, a far-right group, Convention of States, organized a so-called simulation of an Article V convention. The mock convention resulted in, among other things, the adoption of a limitation on Congress' power to regulate interstate commerce, which would negatively impact numerous areas of public policy, including the continued viability of federal civil rights laws like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and other laws that prohibit discrimination and public accommodations. In your view, would an Article V convention be more likely to threaten or to protect Americans' individual and civil rights?
Well, the Convention of States and the organization that has been pushing this amendment and has been getting a number of states to call for this convention is calling for a radical rewrite of the Commerce Clause to do exactly what you are talking about, to significantly and severely undermine civil rights laws, laws that protect workers, laws that protect our environment, laws that protect our health and safety and security. So I think it is a significant major risk, given that that is one of their top priorities, is a significant rewrite of the Commerce Clause.
Would you say that the rewrite or limitation of the Commerce Clause would take us back a long way toward the Articles of Confederation?
I think it would take us way back, who knows how far back, but in ways that we have settled this question. But it is extremely dangerous. And if you look at the whole host of things that came out of their mock convention, that was among their top priority. They also would posit that a simple majority of states could rescind any act of Congress, the president, or a federal agency. And there's a whole host of other provisions that they are pushing for a convention that, again, has no rules.
It does sound like the Articles of Confederation, which the framers found highly inadequate, which is why you had the Constitutional Convention of 1787. My time has expired. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman